At some point, I stopped defending my memories because they made me believe they weren't really mine. This is my nightly ritual again. The fire, the bourbon, and the kind of silence where I hear my thoughts a little too clearly or loudly. I stare into the flames, listen to them crack and spit, and replay everything that happened. And the only thought that won't let go of me is, how could I have believed that? I suppose I should have gone to a priest. But the truth is, I doubt any priest would want to hear all the things I've done. This fire is the only witness that doesn't look away. Before I tell you about the hardest period of my life, allow me to ask one thing. Please like the video and subscribe, but only if this confession truly resonates with you. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It means something to me, knowing who I'm opening my soul to tonight. I will not give names. There will be no cities, no countries. Not because I'm afraid, and not because it isn't true. Just because this is not a story about where it happened. It's a story about what stayed. And pain doesn't have coordinates. They started with a question, not an accusation, not even suspicion. Just a question. How would you describe your childhood? I answered like most people would. I told them about the good parts, the smell of my mother's cooking, the way the street lamps turned on in our neighborhood, that strange, warm orange glow, the long summer days, the feeling of coming home from school and hearing someone laugh in the kitchen. I talked about moments that didn't really mean much at the time, but somehow stayed. And then came the second question. Could it be that you remember it that way? Because you needed to? I didn't understand. They smiled. One of them leaned in, not threatening, just intimate. Sometimes, they said, the mind protects itself with stories. Not lies, no. Just survival fairy tales. It sounded gentle, too gentle, and that's how it started. Not with force, not with denial, with gentle doubt. They never told me to forget. They just encouraged me to revisit. They called it cleansing the lens. Look again, they'd say. Not with longing, with clarity. So I did. At first, it felt innocent, like therapy. I wrote down scenes from my childhood, not full stories, just moments, snapshots, running in the park, sitting under the table while my parents fought, crying when my dog died, playing with a neighbor kid who later stole my bike, winning a spelling bee, being yelled at for getting muddy, a birthday party that ended in tears, a quiet Christmas when no one really talked. And for every memory I wrote down, they asked, what did you feel in that moment? Not what happened, not what was real. Just, what did you feel? That changed everything. Because when I looked at those moments from that angle, something strange happened. The memories blurred, not disappeared, just softened, detached. I started seeing patterns. Patterns they had already gently suggested. Pain masked as comfort, control disguised as love, neglect passed off as independence, loneliness painted as freedom. One day, one of them said, "Do you see how your memories served a purpose?" And I asked, "What purpose?" They answered, "To stop you from seeing how alone you really were." That broke me, not all at once, but something inside me cracked. Because I had felt alone, even in the good times, even in the laughter, even in the glow of the streetlights. I always felt like I was on the outside of something. They didn't invent that. They just pointed it out. And I believed them, so I rewrote some of the moments. Nothing drastic, just toned down the happiness, added a layer of uncertainty. My parents cooked dinner every night. Became, my parents were busy, so food was a way to keep us quiet. I felt safe at home. Became, I was used to the chaos, so I mistook routine for safety. It was a good school. Turned into, they taught obedience more than curiosity. I didn't feel like I was lying. I felt like I was seeing clearly, as if some fog had lifted. And every time I brought a rewritten memory, they nodded. They smiled. They called it honesty. They told me I was brave, that most people never reach this level of self-truth. I started feeling proud. Strange, twisted pride. Because for the first time, someone saw through me and didn't flinch. I thought I was healing, but I wasn't. I was erasing, gently, quietly, and with my own hand. And that's what made it so dangerous. Because no one forced me. No one screamed. No one burned my past. I did. With every new version of my childhood, I lit another corner of the original on fire. Not out of hate, but because I trusted them more than I trusted myself. And that trust felt good. Too good. He asked me one day if I ever felt loved. I said yes. He tilted his head, calm, kind, curious, like always, and asked, "Can you show me how you knew it was love?" I started listing moments. My mother brushing my hair. My father carrying me after I fell asleep in the car. My sister sharing her dessert. That kind of thing. He listened, silent, letting me talk. Then he gently said, "Is it possible that what you called love was simply control that felt warm?" I didn't answer. I laughed, maybe, awkwardly, but something in me recoiled. Not because I disagreed, but because I didn't know how to fight that thought. It returned again the next morning. We were doing reflection circles. That meant sitting with your eyes closed, repeating questions out loud. Not to get answers, but to loosen the mind. The question of the day was, what did they give you that cost you yourself? I said nothing at first. Then I said comfort. Then I said safety. Then I said approval. Each time it felt more true, but less mine. The group would nod quietly, never judgmental, just patient, like they were waiting for me to see what they already saw. A few days later, I was asked to write my entire life story from birth to arrival. Include all that mattered, they said. Everything you think made you who you are. Took me hours. I wrote about how my father taught me to swim, how I felt safe when he held my shoulders. I wrote about my grandmother's perfume and how I would sneak into her closet to smell it. I wrote about the music my mother played when she cooked, and how the smell of burnt garlic always reminded me of Saturdays. I cried while writing it, not because it was sad, but because it felt good to remember something mine. I gave it to him, the one who guided me. He read it, slowly, silently, then handed it back and said, "Now write it again, but this time tell the truth." I froze. He smiled, not cruel, just certain. He said, "What if that love you described was really just need? What if their care was fear? What if you were shaped not by tenderness, but by a cage that disguised itself in lullabies?" I didn't want to believe that, but the next time I tried to rewrite it, I paused before every memory, questioned every feeling. Was I really happy, or was I just performing what they wanted? Did they hug me out of love, or because they felt guilty? Did I feel seen, or just noticed? Every memory began to stutter, collapse. Soon I wasn't sure if I was remembering or editing. He told me, "Real memory isn't fixed. It's a story you tell yourself. And some stories are lies dressed in nostalgia." That line haunted me. I stopped rereading my old journals. I stopped trusting the photographs. I looked at an old image of me, maybe 8 years old, in a party hat with a wide grin, and I wondered, who took that photo? What was I trying to prove with that smile? That I was happy or that I belonged? He told me to try one exercise. Take one memory, any memory, and say it out loud 5 times. But each time question one part of it. I chose a Christmas morning. My mother giving me a book. Me crying because I'd wanted something else, but pretending to be grateful. By the 5th time, I couldn't tell if I was grateful or ashamed. I didn't know if it happened like that at all. That's when the shift began. Memories weren't gone. They were just fogged, loosened, and when I tried to hold on to them, they slipped. One night, I sat across from another member, older, quiet. He looked at me and said, "They weren't bad. They just didn't know better. But you don't have to carry their blindness." Felt like a gift, like I was finally being allowed to put the past down. But I also started to feel cold, empty, lighter in a way that didn't comfort. I stopped using the word childhood. It felt too loaded, too vague. Instead, I said, "before I arrived." And that felt cleaner, simpler. He told me, "You don't owe them your memories. You owe yourself the truth." And so I kept digging, until truth and forgetting became the same thing. I was asked to speak that evening. We were sitting in a half circle just after the silence. That hour of not talking we had every night. Not sleep, not prayer, just stillness. He called it the space where truth becomes audible. He looked at me and said, "Will you tell us who you were? Not who you are. Not where you came from, but who I was." I stood up slowly. My hands didn't know where to go. Folded, behind my back, by my sides.
Issues folded.
Felt smaller, and I began. I started with what I always used to say, that I grew up in a safe home, that my parents weren't perfect, but they tried, that I had friends, laughed a lot, read too much, that I was loved. But after every sentence I heard it, the pause, that subtle disapproval in the room, not from him, from everyone, not direct, not cruel, but heavy, like I was bringing something toxic into a clean place. He didn't interrupt, but when I finished, he waited a moment, then asked softly, "Is that story helping you?" I froze, because no one had ever asked that. He said, "Sometimes we cling to stories that comfort us, but comfort is not clarity, and clarity is what heals." Then he asked me, "If that story were taken away, would you still be you?" I didn't answer. The next morning, I was given a new task. Write the same story again, but with a different lens. The lens of what kept me from awakening. This time, it was different. I wrote, "I was taught to smile when I was sad, that love meant silence, that being seen meant performing, that pain was to be hidden, that my worth came from being needed." The words came faster this time, not because I believed them all, but because I didn't want to hesitate, because hesitation looked like resistance, and resistance meant ego, and ego was the enemy of truth. I said things I didn't even know I thought. My mother hugged me when she wanted to stop herself from crying. My father taught me strength, but only the kind that breaks you. I read it aloud the next night. People cried. One woman whispered, "Thank you." Another nodded slowly, eyes closed, like she'd finally heard her own story. They praised me for my courage. They said, "It's rare to see someone face their illusions so directly." And I felt something I didn't expect.
Pride.
Not for the truth, but for finally giving them what they wanted. That night, he pulled me aside, not to correct me, to praise me. He said, "That was the first time your story matched your spirit." I nodded. I thanked him, and I felt useful. Later, he asked me to tell the story again, but now to strangers, recruits, the ones who had just arrived. I was supposed to share my testimony, but only in the new version, not the one where I was safe, the one where I was lost. And they found me, and so I stood again, different room, different faces, and I said it. My childhood was full of shadows I never saw. Everything I thought was love was actually fear, and only when I came here did I understand what love really is. The room listened. No one clapped. They never did. But I saw it in their eyes, the flicker of recognition, the fear that maybe they had told themselves lies too. Afterward, a man approached me and said, "I think I understand now. My past wasn't mine. It was theirs." And I smiled, but I also felt hollow, because I wasn't sure anymore what I believed, only what I had practiced, only what I was expected to say. And something in me whispered, if I told that story enough times, would I forget the first one? Would it stop feeling like a lie and just become the only version left? He called that spiritual integration. He said, when the outer words and inner world finally align, the old story dies, and with it the suffering. But the problem was, I didn't feel free. I felt scripted. Every time I spoke, I watched their faces for signs of approval. I paused where I knew they'd nod. I cried at the lines they expected tears, not because I was faking, but because I didn't know how else to be. They told me, this is healing. Repetition creates new truth. And I repeated, until doubt felt like betrayal, until silence felt like hiding, until my old self became the stranger. I told that story so many times, I stopped remembering it was once a performance. It became my voice, and I forgot the sound of any other. I tried one night to remember a dream I used to have as a child. It was something about a tree, a huge one. I think I was flying, or maybe I was just climbing it endlessly. There was sunlight and the bark was warm. That's all I could recall. No colors, no sounds, just fragments. But even that felt distant, like remembering a memory from someone else's life. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't panic at that feeling, because that's what they told us. The past is noise, silence is truth, and silence had become my safest place. There was a time I used to cry, quietly, when I couldn't remember my sister's voice, or the way my dog used to run to the door when I got home, or the smell of the soap in our old kitchen. Now, I didn't cry, I just accepted it. They told me, grief is the body letting go of illusion. You should be proud. And we burn things sometimes, old letters, photos, objects we used to love, not in anger, in release. He said, the fire doesn't destroy, transforms. You aren't losing, you're becoming. So I burned my notebook, the one I brought with me that first month, the one with shaky handwriting and uncertain questions. I watched it curl, blacken, disappear, and I told myself this is what freedom looks like. But something strange happened after. Not fear, not regret, just blankness. I couldn't remember what was inside that notebook. Not a word. It was like my brain had deleted the file, and I realized I didn't miss it. In fact, it felt like relief, because remembering hurt, but forgetting made everything easier to bear. We were taught a mantra. If you carry the past, you cannot walk toward the light. So I stopped carrying, stopped asking, stopped looking. I saw others struggle. Some resisted. Some tried to hold on to their names, their birthdays, their parents. They cried when they forgot the tune of a childhood song. And I wanted to comfort them. But also, I didn't understand them anymore. Why cling to ghosts? Why fight to remember something that didn't want to stay? He told us, "You are not your memories. You are the space behind them. When the memories go, you remain." And I believed him. I wanted to believe him, because otherwise, what had I become? There was a girl who left, one night without a word. Her bed was cold in the morning. Her shoes gone. No note. They didn't talk about her. Not once. Not even to say she had failed, or betrayed, or gotten lost. Just silence. And that silence was scarier than any punishment, because it meant she was unremembered. And somehow I feared that more than death. I would rather be rewritten than erased. And maybe that's what they knew. Not everyone fears pain. Not everyone fears obedience. But we all fear being forgotten. So I told my new story more confidently. I said, I didn't have a childhood. I had a script written by others. Now I write my own. Even though I didn't. Not really. Even though my days were written for me. Even though I hadn't made a real choice in months. But I said it. And they believed me. And after a while, I believed me too. One night, someone asked me, in a hushed whisper, "Do you ever miss it?" I didn't ask what it meant. We both knew. And I answered without thinking, "No." He smiled. But a part of me, a small, quiet part, felt a crack. Not grief, not guilt, just a faint awareness that I had lied. Or maybe not lied. Maybe just lost something I used to protect and didn't know how to find again. There was a silence after that conversation that stayed with me for days. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that sounded like something missing. A hum that used to be there, now gone. Like when you walk into a room and can't remember what it used to look like. Like when someone calls your name and it feels foreign. They said that meant I was close. When the old you is fully gone, only truth remains. And I wanted to believe that. I really did. Because the alternative was too frightening. The idea that maybe, just maybe, I had erased myself trying to become free. And what was left was not peace, but a silence I didn't choose. One night, I dreamed of the tree again. Only this time it was gone. Just a field, empty, quiet, and in the middle of it, a voice said, "You are ready." I woke up calm, not happy, not sad, just still. And maybe that's what they wanted all along. Not my joy, not my past, just this version, this neutral, obedient, storyless shape. I didn't fight it, 'cause I didn't remember how. And maybe I didn't want to, because what's the point of remembering when there's no one left to remember as?